It's the What Are You Driven By podcast, where we dive deep to see what motivates and drives our community's best leaders. Welcome back to the What Are You Driven By podcast, where we discover what drives our community's best leaders and how they engage their teams to achieve their potential. I'm your host, Diondra Filicetti, and the author of the book, Engagement Economics, and a professional speaker and trainer. Now, today I'm joined by a special guest. I'm joined by Gillian Bilton, who is a senior HR and labor relations leader. She's a practicing employment lawyer with over 14 years experience in Ontario's healthcare system. As the Director of Talent Services and Legal Counsel at CHEO, the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, she's known for her practical, down-to-earth approach to navigating complex workplace issues with a real passion for employee engagement and wellness. Welcome, Gillian.
Thank you so much for having me today.
It's such a pleasure to have you, and it's been a pleasure to know you over the last little while, but why don't we get you to introduce yourself so that our guests learn a little bit more about you?
Yeah, for sure. So as you mentioned in that brief bio, I'm a practicing lawyer, and I've only ever really worked within the hospital sector here in Ontario. So I started my career off at the Ottawa Hospital and worked my way up from frontline labor relations all the way through to conflict of interest management and compensation classification within HR, mostly within the labor relations areas though. And then I moved over to CHEO, the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, where I am now, and did a brief stint even as the interim chief talent officer, where I got to oversee the entire HR function at CHEO. So it's been a very evolving and windy road for me, but I'm really happy to be able to do these types of things and to meet people like you at these conferences, and really cool opportunities to just chat about things today.
Yeah, I'm really excited. And, for those listening, Gillian is so humble, but there's so much that she does. And so I'd love to maybe let's go to the very beginning of that windy journey for you. And maybe you could share with us, like, what sparked the beginning of your journey? Like, what made you decide to take this journey and start your career in this direction?
It was unique. My father actually was executive director of a not-for-profit organization, and one of his management employees decided to certify a union. I was really young at the time, and I just recall him going through quite a long and arduous road trying to sort out all of that. And he would tell me as he was tucking me in at night, if you ever want to have a really exciting career and make a lot of money, you should consider labor law. So that always stuck with me. So I did. I went to law school, and I specialized in labor and employment law. I got really well connected with the firm, actually, that he had used along the way. And I never looked back, really. And then when I was at the firm, I was ready to graduate. I realized that firm life just wasn't for me, and it just didn't suit my personality. But what really made me thrive and engaged me was the idea of working within a team, working with people, and working towards a common kind of goal and purpose. So that's why I jumped into healthcare originally. So I haven't looked back.
Fascinating. I love that full circle moment. Like, it all started with just watching what your dad went through, and then kind of stepping into that position that would have helped him, in that time and place. That's really cool. I had no idea. Wow.
Yeah. It was, it was quite a windy road, right? My dad actually passed away from cancer while I was in law school. So I think that impacted me quite a bit, because it just helped to bring perspective to things. And I think that also guided my decision away from the law firm and more towards healthcare. Obviously healthcare itself as for the purpose and the vision and the mission and the values, but also just seeing, kind of what matters and the perspective that it brought in his last days, and seeing that his staff, his team that he had oversaw and managed and led for so many years were by his side at the end of his life. And I thought, who goes to see their boss, like in hospice, 20 years later, like that. I thought that was pretty cool. So that really inspired me to just kind of seek out a career that kind of had a little bit more meaning and purpose for me.
Wow. That's first, I'm so sorry that that happened to you. I can't imagine having to study and go through that at the same time. To empathize, like I also lost my dad to cancer, and I can't imagine having been in school to study. It's a lot, and now I can see why, you wanted to make that impact in healthcare even more. It's incredible, like how people can come together in those moments, and it's so beautiful that, like you said, people came to see their boss, in those final moments. That really means that he made such an impact, and I think, you're following that path and doing the same in his honor, which is really beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And I'm sorry to hear about you and your father too. I think it does shape who we are, right? It changes the perspective, and it just makes things more clear about what's really important.
That's the perfect way to put it. And until you go through it, like you can say that, but you don't fully understand what that means until you experience it.
So true. Yeah.
So true. Someone once told me that we're part of the club that we never asked to be a part of.
Like that.
And yeah, I can absolutely relate. So, I love that there's so much purpose in your journey, and there's so much impact. And I want to know, I'm sure there were many challenges along the way, but in this leadership role, is there something that stands out in your mind as a particular challenge that you went through that you overcame?
Yeah, I mean, many, right? I think every leader is challenged immensely every day, and if they're not, there's something wrong. um, they just maybe they're not aware of it. But I think for me, the biggest thing was the transition between being the subject matter expert and being a leader. And I think, it was difficult because I was pigeonholed early on in my career as the subject matter expert, and specifically not having leadership skills. And, I think being kind of, pigeonholed or labeled as such, I let that get to me, let that
Mm.
define me, right? And it really held me back, and it really impacted my confidence and where I saw my career ultimately heading. So I really, just focused on being, perfect, if you will, to the book, like very analytical, very logical, very rational. And I was kind of missing the bigger picture, I think. I was focused on the purpose of the work I was doing at the hospital, but not on what more I could bring to the table. So I think that the hardest part for me was when, I had a leader finally, a new leader who saw something else in me, who saw potential in me to be this, to be more, to be better, just growth opportunity. And she took a chance on me, and she gave me a team, and she let me roll with it. I mean, it didn't happen overnight, right? Like I still very much struggled, and I think I was focused a lot on, trying to build credibility, trying to show that I knew what I was doing, and trying to be the smartest person in the room, or to have all the answers, and to, tell people what to do as opposed to help them learn. And I think that's been kind of my biggest challenge along the way, is to kind of switch the perspective from the actively practicing lawyer to the coach leader, if you will. Like it was a very different approach. And sometimes it's really hard when I wear my multiple hats, because people will come to me and they'll go, Gillian, I just want the answer. You're the lawyer. Give me the
Oh,
answer, right? Like sometimes I'll have to be like, oh, so in this scenario, I have to wear that hat. I'm not supposed to be the annoying coach right now.
Oh my God. Yeah, true. It's like, okay, which version of me applies in this situation?
Yeah. And so, but it's really cool because it took me a long time to even get here, right? Because I
Uh-huh.
would have been just misapplying this along the way, just
Right.
to it all. So that's been probably my greatest challenge. And then obviously just like, the stuff that every leader goes through, I think. It's just kind of navigating different personalities
Mhm.
on your team, right? And understanding that not one size fits all, right? What makes one person tick or drives them, if you will, doesn't drive the other, right? Or like, so
Yeah.
I think it's just learning to the flexibility and the agility of all of that. And yeah, knowing when I need to provide an answer and when I need to coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I got this visual as you were sharing that about like a soccer team, at the beginning of your career as the lawyer, like you're the striker, the star player, and then like transitioning into that leadership role, it's stepping onto the sidelines as the coach and trying to figure out, okay, how do all these different skills and personalities fit together, and how do I coach them to be better? And then there's that occasional time where you got to show them how to do it, and that's a big skill on its own. And I think the thing is, when we step into leadership, like we're learning all these skills on the fly as these scenarios come up.
Absolutely. And like, especially when, my career has been in HR, right? So I've been coaching people as part of my lawyer duties for all these years
Ah,
on how to lead their people.
right.
I'm saying, do this, do this, do this, and I'm going by the book. And it is not the same when you do it yourself. Like here I am coming in hot, thinking I have all the answers, and then all of a sudden it's real and it's in your face, and you have your employee looking at you and they're having a moment and they're crying, and I'm going, what the heck do I do?
Yeah.
Answer right now.
And each person would want something different in that moment. So navigating that can be extremely, extremely challenging. And that makes sense as to how that's been one of your greatest challenges. But it sounds like you've also learned so much through that challenge.
Well, I've learned probably more what not to do
Mm,
more than what to do, right? Like, and to your point, like what worked yesterday might not work tomorrow, right? So it is a constant reevaluation, trial and error, and day to day.
yeah, yeah. On top of like navigating the wider changes like in your industry and what you're doing. So I wonder, like, if we're zooming out and pulling in that lens, like, have there been any like big changes in your industry that you've also had to adapt to on top of being a leader?
Definitely. So healthcare is a grind. The budget pressures and the resource pressures are so impactful on, staff engagement and, just trying to find creative ways and creative solutions to ensure your people are well at work and remain engaged. I mean, across the board in the province right now in healthcare, everyone's really seeking some significant budget pressures. So it's really forced me throughout the years to really come up with creative solutions that don't cost a lot of money. It's frustrating for me, if I'm being perfectly vulnerable and honest, when I go to these amazing conferences and I'm learning about all these great tools and resources that are available in the market, that I just know that we just can't afford.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm trying to do is trying to just tease out as much as I can out of the concepts and the learnings and, best practices, and then trying to find some creative solutions to bring it back to my people and um, really see if we can, adapt and make it work. So, we've been trying to do that in different ways. There's the age old, social committee stuff, which is great. Obviously our hybrid work environments don't help those type of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't have that sense of connection as much. But what we've been trying to do is really encourage more in-person department meetings, and then actually pairing people up with other departments across the hospital to shadow and to actually learn and see what, the front line are doing. So,
Oh, that's great.
yeah, it's been really impactful and it's free. Like this is free. It's a great way to help our people learn more about the vision and the values and the goals of the organization, but also appreciate what their, colleagues are doing in completely different career paths. Like I got to shadow speech language pathology one day, and I was like, there's no way I would have ever learned any of that had I not had that opportunity, right? Like
Yeah.
just it's random stuff like that, but it created so much awareness and insight and perspective into the work that I do. It's very impactful, and we saw some really great feedback too from our department, talent services department, on the impact that had on them too. Just
That's
to
awesome.
break down those silos a bit and to understand, right?
Yeah, it creates so much empathy because sometimes, we assume that we have this idea of what, our neighbor or a colleague does in their position and in their role. But then when we actually experience the challenges or the knowledge that they're using on a day-to-day basis, it's like, oh, wow, like I really have a newfound respect for what it is that you do and the impact that you're creating. I think creating those moments it's so valuable, and so many organizations just find that, oh, maybe we can't accommodate that, or, it's not feasible to do that. But I think that's such a great idea. And it actually happened to me in my first career where I was actually in healthcare packaging. And there was this program where when you first got hired, instead of a traditional onboarding, they would literally just send you for shadowing for every single department. And you would spend like 3 days to a week in each department and just follow someone around all day. And at the end, then it would turn into, which one did you find resonated with you the most? Let's start building out a 3-year plan for where you want to take your career, which, in hindsight, that was such an incredible program. And I just remember being early in my career, learning so much. And I haven't had an experience like that since.
That is so cool. I remember reading about that actually. Book. And I think that's fascinating as well. Like to be able to be given that autonomy in your growth opportunities, right? Within a company, and the succession planning opportunities internally, right? But the connections too, and the appreciation.
Actually, so I'm gonna dive even deeper here and ask you for some more strategies on how you've been able to better engage your team. Gallup's numbers came out, and engagement has actually fallen this year globally. And so we're down about 3 percentage points, and we're up in disengagement costs by $1 trillion. And so in the healthcare market, from what I've heard, I haven't done an in-depth research here, but I'm talking about just some social media posts that I've seen. But disengagement seems to be particularly high in healthcare because I think of some of the challenges you presented, like lots of work, budget constraints. And so with those challenges, have there been particular strategies that you've seen work well when engaging your team?
There are definitely strategies that we're working towards in helping this scenario. What we're seeing a lot of is high burnout, especially in the emerge departments with our physicians, but across the board too, right? Our nursing union, generally just, high acuity too in the patients. And so burnout and retention, turnover, it's been a challenge. So what we've been noticing though with our engagement scores, and as you've indicated as well in your research, the age-old thing, people leave because of their bad boss, right? There's 70% of the impact, right, would be your direct leader. And so, back to the budget pressure issue, it's expensive to get coaching. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially at the scale that we're looking at, right? Like CHEO has about 4,500 staff. So
Yeah.
at that scale, leadership coaching is expensive. And we are a small team in talent services. So it's been a challenge to ensure that our leaders are providing the right leadership opportunities for their people and ensuring that they're helping the burnout aspect and engagement. So what we've been trying to do as a strategy is, and I do it with my own staff, is a coaching-based leadership approach. I like to say to them, like, I'm teaching you how to fish, essentially. But if I'm doing that for them and I'm modeling that behavior for them, the hope and the goal is that they're going to do that with their colleagues, so their management colleagues across the organization. So I'm in a unique position being in talent services, wherein, my teams do have that day-to-day interaction with the other leaders on these types of really important pieces, the leadership aspects. So if I can get my team, kind of buying into my coaching styles, and then I'm trying to help them also teach them how to fish on how to do it with their people. This is the idea, is that we're trying to upskill our leaders organically, just through the process. So instead of telling the leaders what to do day to day, we're giving them the tools and the resources and the guidance to show them how to do it and how to do it on their own next time. So we're trying to build the autonomy and, the skill set internally and organically, and a lot cheaper than it would be if you just brought somebody in, right? So, and then the idea is that also with the amount of turnover that we have in an organization this size too, is that bringing in a company for a month, you're going to miss the next cohort turnover of your next leaders. So the idea is that this idea will just continue organically, and we do that through just a coaching model, turning them into their own SMEs, right? And then they in turn go to their colleagues. So
I love that. It's like creating this coaching culture from the top down, turning everybody into a coach, so that you're in turn flipping the script because you're empowering everybody to do it themselves. And as you're building that autonomy, we know how much autonomy is linked to engagement. So I think turning it into a cultural phenomenon, I think, is a really unique way to capture that style of creating engagement without the budget of, bringing in external expertise. It's like, how do we turn the dials up on our existing expertise and really shift people to becoming change leaders and coaches and people that actually create new skills, right? By helping others to cultivate and develop those skills.
It's so true, right? And especially healthcare is not a whole lot different than probably many other industries, but because everything is by the book, especially clinically, right? Like there's a right way and a wrong way usually to how to do things. And I think people they fall into this, the mundane, the day-to-day, the doldrums of the process. And they don't feel like they're really using their brains, and they're not really being creative, and they don't really have any control over what they do, right? And they don't feel like they're heard, or they're like, they feel taken for granted, and they feel like they're just one number of a mass. So I feel like this strategy helps with encouraging thought, encouraging people's opinions and perspectives, and giving them a voice as well.
Yeah.
And, hey, this is how I do these things. I'd love to coach my colleagues on, maybe I have an idea to make this even more efficient. And, I think there's something really powerful in that.
I think so too. So another question I typically ask is about advice for new leaders. And I think over and above this strategy and kind of bringing this to the table at different organizations, if someone else was coming to you as a new leader, what would be some advice that you would give them?
Probably the advice I would have given myself, right? And which is, think about who really stands out to you as far as some of your best leaders that you've had along the way. What made them amazing? What makes them stand out? Think about, how do you compare yourself and the things that you're striving to do day to day with those qualities that you are now identifying in these leaders that you can recall. And for me, it was astonishing how it was different. And it doesn't really make sense, right? Like that doesn't really follow. And so, it was actually the thought process that I had to actually intentionally have to say, Well, hold on. Like what I really, really appreciated about, this one leader I had was her humility and her patience
Ah,
and how she never made me feel like she didn't have time for me. And I never felt rushed. I knew how busy she was, but she never made me feel like I was a burden. And she was also really quick to point out when she didn't know something or when she was wrong or like she didn't have to always be the smartest person in the room. And those things were always really, really admirable to me. And then I thought about my own style and I was like, ooh, I gotta work on
hmm.
that. Why is it that had never dawned on me that perhaps I should reflect on that? But I mean, that's not to say that those things that we look up to in other people are what our people want of us, right? But I do think it is a good starting point to at least be self-aware.
Yeah.
Like, what is your focus? What do you seem to be most concerned about? And then is that the right to focus? Like for me, being the SME, do I really need to focus on that? Do I really need to worry about my credibility? Like I already have the letters beside my name.
True. Yeah.
I don't need to drive it home at every chance I get. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's so true. Sometimes when we take that step back and just evaluate, like, hold on a minute, this is where I would like to be, but this is where I'm at. Okay, let me just close the gap here. But without stepping back, sometimes, you don't, if you don't do that exercise, you don't realize,
so true.
right? I think that's a great piece of advice, though. So, with all that you've learned, one question I always love to ask is about impact stories. With all your experience in leadership, like, is there an impact story that stands out to you where you feel like you've impacted someone's life in a positive way, or maybe they've told you? Can you think of one that comes to mind?
Yeah. And I mean, I do think that as leaders, we have to be mindful that it's the little nuances that happen kind of day to day that don't really seem like much in the moment that build. They're building blocks to something bigger. You're not going to have that one big hero moment where you're
Mhm.
going to do one thing and then it's going to be like, oh my gosh, amazing, write about it. No, it's gonna be little subtle things. So I think for me it was inheriting my first team, when I was so new and vulnerable and lacking confidence. And kind of seeing that I think in one of my staff members and knowing the reputation and the narrative that was around her as being perhaps she was not organized enough. And people would say, she can't see the forest for the trees kind of thing. Like
Mm,
focus. She doesn't understand details, prioritization, those types of things. And I made a point to say, I'm going to change the narrative for her because I'm wondering if that's what's holding her back. Because that's what was holding me back.
yeah.
It was this idea that I didn't have leadership skills, and I was like, no. So I did. I just slowly started to really upspeak her, and to other people, not necessarily in front of her, just in general. So I would say, she did really well on this. Look at this work that she did. Like obviously I was being genuine. I wasn't making stuff up. But just those little tiny like, burst moments where I would just give her credit for something awesome and kind of just plugging here and there all of these efforts. And that got back to her. It sunk in over time and it came back to her, the energy, the positive energy. And I saw her confidence just skyrocket. She was promoted 3 levels after that, like at pretty quick succession. Like she was a smart woman. I saw this in her. Not necessarily like ever circled back to say anything to me, and I don't need that validation, but that drove me, right? That
Yeah.
me and knowing that, we all have this in us and we all have these barriers that are in our heads sometimes. Sometimes it's just one person saying one thing and it sticks and it ruins us. But it can be as easy as another person seeing the opposite.
Yeah.
Make a big difference.
And I love how subtle it was. It was something that you saw and you took action on, but in a way that It wasn't so direct, like, let's do this. We're going to change your mindset. We're going to get you confident again. It was just a little comment here, a little comment there. And then to see the impact, that's awesome. I think those types of things, when you're able to be the leader that actually has a hand in the success of a teammate, I think that really speaks to your ability as a leader. So that's awesome. And I have to give you your congratulations for making that happen. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you. No, it feels good, right? It comes around. The energy, it's cyclical.
Right? Exactly. What goes around comes around. And I think I think it's so important that how you approach that, and the fact that it spiraled, it came back to you, it came back to the team, and really changed the course of her career. Moments like this are so beautiful in our leadership journey. I know that we have so many challenges, so many constraints that we're faced on a day-to-day basis. But one question I always have to ask everyone on the podcast is, Gillian, what are you driven by?
Excellent question. I am driven by the same things I think that drive our people, just in different ways. I'm driven by the ability to effectively feel like I am controlling my work, my time, the autonomy that I have in my job, my opportunities for growth, like these opportunities right now, being able to chat with you about this, and feeling supported by my own leader and my colleagues in doing that, right? Being able to trust my boss, being able to trust my coworkers, right? Knowing that we have each other's backs. And also just like knowing that what I'm doing is making a difference to the organization, to kids, in my case, and to my team, actually seeing them thrive and do their best work. Those things all drive me. I also really like the variety of what I do, right? Like, I just love that every day is different, and I thrive on that. So,
I love that.
yeah.
From the very beginning, when, your dad planted that seed in you, into what it's grown into, and one thing I took away from our chat today was the amount of self-awareness that you've cultivated over the years. And I know, some of it might have been from those difficult moments, and others were when you were challenging yourself to step into new roles and see things new ways. But the amount of growth that has happened since your dad planted that seed in you and to where you are today, to be able to look back and on your career so far and already see what you've accomplished and what you've learned and who you are, it's just a wonderful thing to see where it could go next, and how much more you're going to accomplish. So I have to say thank you so very much for joining us on the podcast today. And I'd love to have our listeners find where to find you online if they'd like to get connected.
Absolutely. I'm definitely on LinkedIn, so please check it out. I would love to connect anytime.
Amazing. So please get connected with Gillian. Gillian, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. It was so wonderful to hear your story.
Oh, it was such a pleasure to be here. Truly. Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Of course, of course. And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to the What Are You Driven By podcast. We hope that you'll join us next time for another incredible leadership story. So make sure you subscribe and connect with us online at Driven by Co.